So this is addressing people who just naturally have this hatred, right, towards like dancehall videos, African dancing or Caribbean dancing, or a merge between African dancing and Caribbean dancing, right, or even Indo dancing, right, Indo dancing, Indian dancing, Indo mixed with Indo dancing, Indo mixed with African dancing, whatever, right, anything. If you naturally have a hatred towards that kind of culture without first seeking to say, hey, why, right? Why girls in dancehall videos just do this? Why does do this, right? What's the social and historical and cultural conditions that give rise, right, to this state of being, right? So this addressing the almost inherent hatred, right, stemming from British Western colonial and as well as Indian, as certain aspects of African as well, Chinese, all these things, all places in the world, all other cultures, right, that have this dislike, resentment, or hatred, right, for African and Caribbean dancing, right, videos with respect to nudity, right, that type, nudity and sexual liberation, right? Sexually liberating videos, dance videos, right? And it's to ask yourself, why do I have a distaste in my mouth, right, for these types of expressions, right? Me personally, I don't judge how people choose to respond to years and decades and generations of colonial abuse, right? I don't really judge how people choose to express all those things, right? In fact, I prefer Jamaican expressions rather than Trinidad because Jamaicans give it good, right? Jamaicans just give them it raw, right? And I personally don't have an issue with this, right? I don't care who say who hates it and who don't hate it. You know why, right? Because those who say they hate it, right? Like you are literally earlier, like last night, since last night, right? I hear voices bawling. I hate that, right? I, the only reason you would hate that is because you're running the show and you don't want that to change. If you really hate it, no, you like it. You like it because if you hate it, you will talk out against whoever was responsible for having people in that state of condition and have them to express all this stuff in that way because of colonial abuse. You will talk out against it. You wouldn't be proud to be that. So you don't really hate it. You in fact love it, right? You in fact love it, right? So the voice last night, right, it was a male voice. I was like, they hate that, right? If you really hate that, them girls dancing out like that and sexually liberating themselves on camera, you know what you would do? You would force Britain to pay the flipping money, right? To get people out of them kind of conditions. Because otherwise you ain't hate it, you love it, right? Listen, I don't love it, but I don't have a problem with it either, right? You know why? Because when people suffering for years and decades or generations of colonial abuse and nobody ain't doing nothing, nobody is speaking out about it, right? Nobody who claiming, right? In the top level religions I'm talking about, because in school we just always learn about them thing, we just talk about them thing, right? And UE and so something, right? But I talking about the top level religious people, right? You ain't doing nothing about it. You ain't doing nothing to solve the situation, right? But you wanna ball, you hate it. You can't hate it, right? And you ain't doing nothing to help to solve the situation. That's my take on that issue. Watch the contrasting, right? Watch the contrast in terms of where people are allowed to live, where people are not allowed to live, movement, all these things, transport, accessibility, resources. Watch the difference in people, right? So I don't want to hear nothing about, and that's why I'm telling you, some of your judgment, right? Whether you want to base all your judgment on righteousness alone, or you're saying, modesty and righteousness alone is a wrong form of judgment, right? Because you're not taking into consideration, hey, I born in a culture, or you born in a culture where the hijab is a norm, right? But my girls are born in a culture where sexual liberation is normal, right? And in one culture, I born in a culture where white going to church is normal, right? And you're white and you're going to church and you grew up like that, or you're Amish, right? And you grew up like that, right? But some people, they was forced to be prostitutes all their life, whatever, right? Or um, they was in bondage for some reason, right? Or either they're still in bondage, right? Or either the people who go into church still suppressing them and still oppressing them, right? Never forget that people was descendants of slavery, right? So when all you want to judge based on all your heterosexual norm, right? And not heterosexual don't even have nothing to do with it, but what all your white fucking version and this and that, right? And where you love and where you hate, right? Know that these people had a history, and your ancestors, all your ancestors was responsible, right, for the history, right? That all you ball and oh, that all you hate, all you hate, all you hate, all you hate, right? People had a history, and people still struggling because of that history, right? So you hate your mother and hate your father, right? Good.